This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
We're going to move now to a report by the Gauteng City Region Observatory, the City of Johannesburg Municipal Report, findings from the GCRO's Quality of Life Survey. I'm joined on the air by Rashid, Seedat, Gauteng City Region Observatory. How are you, Rashid? And welcome indeed. Thanks for creating time.
Good morning, Mbuyiseni, and thank you for having me.
Thanks very much. And I'm also joined by the CEO of South Africa Cities Network, Nosipho Hlatswayo. Welcome to Power Talk.
Good morning, Mbuyiseni. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Let me start with you, Rashid. I'd like us to do the sort of patient going through the major findings of the report. But if you could, as a point of introduction and point of departure, just tell us what the report is about, how is it collected from a methodological point of view, and who the Gauteng City Region Observatory is.
Yes, I'll start with the Gauteng City Region Observatory. It is actually a partnership between the Gauteng Provincial Government, SALGA in Gauteng, the Wits University, and the University of Johannesburg. It's quite a unique partnership. We're an urban observatory which exists, the idea exists in many parts of the world. We've been going strong for something like 17 years. We're coming on to 17 years. And we basically do research, collect data on an independent basis. Even though we're partially funded by government, we basically are autonomous from the point of view of ensuring that our evidence is based on facts. And that's the GCRO. Just to say, you are referring to the Quality of Life Survey. We've done 7 of them. It's one of the largest surveys that are conducted in South Africa after the work done by State SA. We do something like 14,000 face-to-face interviews throughout the Gauteng area, and asking about 100 questions. And we've done 7 of them over the years, and it generates very, very rich data. The survey and the results were actually launched in October last year, but of course, they remain extremely relevant until today.
And just a quick one on the methodology. What's your sample size and all of that?
We have an enormous sample. The sample is, in fact, 3,795 for the most recent survey, which by any standards is extremely large. The reason why we have such a large sample is that we want to touch every municipality and every ward within, like all 500 and some odd wards that exist within the Gauteng province. So in that sense, it gives us a real rigor in terms of what we're doing. Just to say that what we find with, say, for example, if we compare our results with previous census results or other surveys done by State SA, they're fairly consistent.
Yeah.
So in a way, I think that there is a great degree of reliability coming through.
I see. And so the major findings then, if maybe before we go through what I think are interesting items, but that's your general summary of the findings of this report when it comes to Johannesburg.
Okay, I think that there are several different findings, but maybe let's just start with service delivery, which I think affects people in a very real, direct way. I think if we live, work, and play in Joburg, you're finding that the infrastructure is crumbling, and I think that we are all concerned collectively about it, but our data is very clear. Some of it is actually some objective data, some of it is actually perceptions. but they are equally important. So, for example, water has been a big issue, as we all know, and the satisfaction with water is at an all-time low in Johannesburg. Remember, in the past, I mean, if you had water, the issue is not excess. The issue is basically, interruptions in your water supply, and that is what people are very concerned about. People are also concerned about the cleanliness of water. It used to be 78% satisfaction in 2017-18. It's dropped to 58%. That's a 20 percentage point drop over kind of a 7-year period. And so the list goes on. Similar picture for sanitation. I mean, another important one is electricity, as we know, and not due to load shedding. But we've seen something like 33% increase in residents who are experiencing interruptions in the course of something like 7 or 8 years. So, and let me just say, the issue about potholes that we're all very well aware of, is the satisfaction with that has also declined very dramatically. Now it's only at 41% are satisfied, which is the lowest rated service in Johannesburg. So it's basically, I mean, just to talk about the public environment, which we've seen deteriorating very dramatically, but also the network services that people receive in their houses, water and electricity, are particularly at risk. But, I mean, that is just to give you some sense. Of course, it's a huge survey. It covers many, many dimensions. But I think these are the symptoms of a deeper malaise that exists within the city.
If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk. We are discussing the state of the quality of life here in the city of Johannesburg. Mam Hlatswayo, I wanted to, maybe as a point of introduction before my actual question about the contents, if you could just indicate to us what South African Cities Network is about, just for the sake of the listeners.
Okay, so the South African Cities Network is a voluntary organization with all the metropolitan municipalities in South Africa. So we were established in 2002, and at the time we had the city of Cape Town, Johannesburg, city of Tshwane, Nelson Mandela Bay. At that time, Buffalo City was not a metro. It's now a metro, so they're part of the network. Mangaung as well. And the aim of the South African Cities Network is to do research on cities. But not just any research, it's action research that says if things are going this way, why are they going this way, and therefore what should be done. So we then do publish a number of flagship publications, including in those the State of the Cities Report and the State of the Finances Report, where we compare all these municipalities, try to come up with trends over time, and over and above looking at the trends is to get insights on what is happening in municipality. Our last publication on the State of the Cities Report focused really on issues of governance, not governance in a sense that's only looking at municipalities and what happens between the legislative and the administrative arm, but governance in the sense that says for a city to fully function and for it to do what it's supposed to do, it needs to draw on the capabilities of those that are outside of government, meaning your academia, your NGOs, and business to supplement what the city is seeking to do. We are right now preparing for the 6th iteration of the State of the Cities Report, which will be published just after the next local government elections.
Okay, Rashid, I'm going to try do item by item, and then we'll do this symbiosis to and fro between yourselves and the CEO. But I have here, for instance, that related to the state of housing in the report, they indicate that in Johannesburg, respondents across indicated satisfaction was high in 2020-2021, with 73% of the respondents reporting they were satisfied with their dwellings. This has declined to 68% by 2024, coinciding with the rise in dissatisfaction to 24%. Can you speak to us about that? What does it mean? The housing situation is getting worse, or it's just there's no the new generations of adults are increasingly not getting access to decent housing?
Well, I think it's actually both in some ways. Just to say that I think it's fairly well known that Gauteng is a major beneficiary of migration from other provinces in the first instance, of Limpopo, KZN, and other surrounding provinces, and of course international migration, and many people coming to Gauteng and Johannesburg in particular, and that basically creates a very serious housing crisis. At the same time, there is a national population growth from within the city and within the province more broadly, and our housing programs are basically unable to keep pace. I think that is the fundamental challenge that we face. So, and also there's been a decline. If you look at the numbers, the famous numbers that came out, out of the RDP, like 2.3 million houses built and so on. There was a great sort of house building programs. I mean, irrespective of what you think about the quality and so on, and the location, but basically houses were built in quite substantial numbers. That, in terms of the housing authorities, both provincially and in the city, basically the numbers have been very low. And I'm aware that, for example, monies are routinely returned to the National Department of Human Settlements. So I think, and of course, I mean, the private sector is not coming to the party either. It's not only governments. They would only, really focus on the building of houses from a particular level, and there's no concern for low income or for affordable housing. And the missing middle in the case of housing is also a great issue, because they can receive neither state subsidies nor can they receive bonds from private from private banks as such. So I think it is a power take, because it means that it's leading to a huge proliferation of informal settlements. I mean, if you go to the southwestern parts of the city of Johannesburg, within the municipal area, areas like Koortjie and Orange Farm and so on. I mean, you just see a sea of informal settlements. Similarly, the northwestern parts around Winterveld, Mabopane, Shangulwe, and so on. And I think very importantly, what the research is showing is that there's a great increase in the number of backyard shacks. So, especially in historic townships like Soweto, Mamelodi, etc. So, in the past there might have been one, now there's like 5 or 6 or whatever. I mean, of course, it's, the landlords are responding to demand, but it means that is the kind of situation. So people living in less than adequate circumstances include people living in informal settlements, backyard shacks, and of course bed buildings in the inner city, not only in Johannesburg but in many other cities as well.
Nosipho, with regards to the capacity of the cities, and I mean, I'm thinking of Johannesburg, this capacity to look at predictive studies that say this is the rate of population growth, and then this is the rate of migration over 10, 20 periods, and plan for human settlement. What's difficult with that capacity? Because it should be at the center of city planning.
You're right. Predictive studies should inform our policy, but I think in Mbuyiseni we need to bring the conversation back on who is responsible for providing housing. in the context of local government in South Africa. So the role of business or the private sector, as Rashid has articulated, there's a clear role there. Those that can afford, they need to be, they have access to housing through that. But then when you find to those that need to be socially assisted by the state, you find that the responsibility of providing housing, money comes from the national fiscus, goes to provinces, and municipalities at this stage are not accredited, yet they are providing this service. They are building houses. So you can see that, this filtering of the money from one CEO of government to the other has got its own complications in terms of by the time that money gets to local government, and this different assignment of responsibilities when it comes to housing delivery, it creates its own problems. Even if you can predict and say we will have 2 million people coming to Johannesburg over the next 6 months, but because we've got so many road players and we haven't streamlined that, it then creates a problem of its own. Secondly, also linked to this is the fact that when we talk about the provision of housing and being predictive about who comes, you need also other agencies who are outside of the provision of housing to be able to provide housing. Because when we talk about satisfaction with housing, some of the housing requirements in the city of Johannesburg is not only necessarily for the South African citizens who might qualify for what used to be called the RDP housing. There's a huge demand for housing, in fact, which would, if that demand was to be met, which might reduce the squalor that we see. People that are legally in South Africa, but who cannot have access to affordable rental housing. And that's why we are seeing this mushrooming of backyard dwellings that Rashid is talking about, where in order to meet the demand, and also for the house owners, them trying to activate alternative economic sources, then you find that there's this spike in backyard shared dwelling. So it's the multiple actors, not only the cities, that need to come together and solve this problem. And also it requires us, in terms of policy alignment, to say, do we see the backyard dwellings as a problem, or do we see it as an opportunity to supplement and address some of these issues that we deal with, but obviously within a regulated environment that ensures that we do not promote or we do not perpetuate squalor, and also we create safe living conditions for the people.
Okay. It's 11:30 here. We are speaking about the quality of life survey in the city of Johannesburg focus. We're going to take the headlines with Thabo Mulukwan. Stay tuned.
Connect with Mbuyiseni on X at Mbuyiseni Ndlozi.
We are back with the conversation about the quality of life. Rashid, I wanted to move to another of the subjects that is covered here, and that relates to the levels of unemployment here in the city of Johannesburg. The report claiming that about 50% of the respondents are unemployed or not working for various reasons. That's pretty high, and I don't know if you want to address us about how you came specifically to this number.
So, we, in the interviews that we do, we are basically able to get a sense, and we do use. So, let me just digress actually for a second. If you remember, the CEO of this bank, Capitec, basically said day before yesterday that he thinks that the unemployment rate in South Africa is in the order of 10%, because we're not taking into account the informal sector. But the response from SETSA is correct, that actually we're using the methodologies that are applied by the ILO, and we do exactly the same. So in our survey, we basically speak to a member of the household and get a sense. Remember that StatSA gets its numbers from the labor force survey. I think there's maybe 30,000, 40,000 interviews that they do throughout the country. In Gauteng, we do, as I said, in the order of 14,000. And it gives us a pretty good sense. So we think our numbers are broadly consistent with StatSA's numbers. And of course, we also take into account, both the ILO narrow definition and the broader definition of discouraged work seekers. And yes, indeed, I think what we're finding is that there is a higher level of unemployment in Johannesburg than the national average and the provincial average. And we think that it has to do with people being attracted to the city of gold, as it were, and the idea that you're going to find employment, and basically it also means that, for people who are now living in informal settlements and so on, and that proliferation is the source of where people who are unemployed actually live. So, I think, it's well known that this is a national crisis, and Joburg is no stranger to it, and in fact is a particularly egregious example.
Nosipho, the capacity of the state to result in some form of jobs on the one hand, and the city's use of its procurement muscles to create sustainable jobs in various aspects of community life. These are things that we hear over and over about, and yet levels of unemployment are growing out of control. Is this one of the indicators of the complete failure of these cities?
So, Mbuyiseni, maybe let's go back. What is local government meant? What is it meant to do when it comes to economic development, right? Because in the Constitution, the objects of local government are very clear. It says that it's meant to promote socio-economic development. Now, there's a very that's a very distinct role. The state or local government was never meant, according to the Constitution, to be the mass employer. While one recognizes that there are opportunities through the functionings of the municipality which can create job opportunities. So what we've seen when the state has developed things such as your public employment programs, your community work programs, and even in some instances, shifting from outsourcing to insourcing of people. Those, the first ones, which are short-term in nature, are just that. They are short-term in nature. But then when we then say we want for people to have a permanent employment using local government, there are trade-offs that the municipality needs to do, because now you are saying, I want to be the best employer. And I'm all for the idea of people being employed, because when they're employed, their quality of life improves. They have access to services of the municipality. They can pay the municipality, and they can also be fully functioning individuals in that municipality. However, it shouldn't come at the cost of the municipality, in a sense that doing that then increases the wage bill of the municipality to an extent that the municipality has to choose between providing services or delivering services, and also making sure that there is infrastructure development that takes place. So it's a very delicate balancing out that needs to take place in the municipality. However, having said that, what the city really needs to do is to create conducive environments to attract investment in the city. Number two, retain that investment in the city. Now, how do you do that? If I am the owner of the means of production and I want to invest in the city of Johannesburg, I need to know that electricity is reliable. Rashid was talking about the satisfaction. I don't need to know that it is electricity, but I need to know that while I am producing, there will be minimal interruptions in terms of access to the electricity. I need to know that if my goods are moving between point A to point B, social and over to Orange Farm, that my fleet is not going to be damaged because of the road conditions that are not good. I need to know that there's reliable water for me to operate. So those are the things that are also contributing, and this is what the Constitution was talking about when it says you promote socio-economic development in the municipality. So using your roles and responsibilities to make sure that those that want to invest in the city invest so that people can be employed in the city. And this is what we are finding, that because those basics that what the city was meant to do sometimes are not met, then we are finding ourselves where we're not attracting enough investment, or we're not obtaining enough investment, and therefore these high labor unemployment numbers that we are faced with.
Rashid, I want to go now to the question of refuse removal. The report says 8 out of 10 Johannesburg households, 84% that is, have their refuse removed once a week, although the frequency of refuse removal declined from 89% in 2020, 2021 to 84% 2023, 2024. Can you speak to us about this? Because it seems to me that 84% is still very high, and but the idea when you drive in and around Johannesburg, you don't quite get a sense that there is an adequate refuse removal. Have we been wrong all along?
No, I don't think we've been wrong in any way. I think there are two issues. The one, when they say 89% down to 84%, that's what's called RCR, round collected refuse. In other words, your weekly collection in formalized areas, right? And I think that is generally the satisfaction on that is at 89, 84% is basically pretty high, although we see some concerns there. And I think that as a resident of Joburg, living in the suburbs, I know that it's generally predictable, even on Christmas Day, etc., etc. The problem comes...
Even on Christmas Day.
Even Christmas Day, for sure. And in fact, Pick It Up actually, says that very clearly. The issue is, in fact, in informal settlements where there isn't the RCR that we're talking about. Some of it has to do with the inability of the municipality or the trucks to actually enter because of the the way the roads are designed and laid out and all of that, and that is a big constraint on it. But also, I think that my view is that subjective view is that I think the municipality is not trying hard enough. So what they do is that they basically put skips on the outskirts of an informal settlement, which people use. Those skips are not regularly serviced, and basically people start illegal dumping. So the issue around the cleanliness of the city has to do with illegal dumping by residents, the lack of facilities. So if you're in a suburban area, you're fine. But if you're in a non-suburban area, or even formal township areas, it's not too bad. But the moment it becomes informal, there's an issue. The other issue, I guess, is that is the capacity of the municipality to enforce its bylaws. They always say, every city official will tell you, no, if you go at 5 a.m. in downtown Joburg, you see clean. By 8 o'clock, it's dirty. So, but why is the city not enforcing its bylaws and making sure that people don't litter in the city, for example? So, but there's also on their side the need to ensure that there are adequate bins and so on, and also they need to make sure that informal traders, are not just discarding their fresh produce and so on, out onto the streets.
Yeah. Let's go to public health. Another surprising number overall in the city of Johannesburg, those reported outweigh those reporting dissatisfaction with regards to public health facilities. The report says on average 53% of your respondents expressed satisfaction with public healthcare facilities they use. Again, 53% is pretty high, taking into consideration, and it says it's even higher in Region B, where 77% of public healthcare users reported being satisfied. Find it very hard to believe this, but it seems that would give an impression that there's something right being done in the city of Johannesburg about public healthcare facilities.
Yeah, look, I think that it's, okay, I mean, we all know the kind of popular thing that happens, right? In people having to arrive early in the morning at public hospitals or municipal clinics, and spending hours there and so on. But I guess that the fact that the facilities do exist and many people, or tens of thousands of people actually use them, I think people just have a sense that, it's okay. It's not particularly high. I mean, if you look at like refuse removal in the 80s, I mean, that is like a good level of satisfaction. 53% is marginal. So we go with what the data is saying, and the data does suggest that people are not deeply and profoundly unhappy.
Just the last from this one, there are interesting ones here about social attitudes, but for instance, you report that trust levels, or you report about trust levels that the majority of your respondents answered that in the communities that they live in, 72% feel unsafe, like you need to be much more careful, compared to 26% who felt that most people can be trusted. There's dramatic levels of distrust within and neighbors and communities in Johannesburg, with Region F with the highest proportion of respondents who said you need to be very careful, and this is the measure, as it were, of community members trusting each other. Can you speak to us about that?
So what we found over the years in relation to, community interaction is that there was a general, generally it is not that low. It's reasonable. What we did find during the COVID years, very interestingly enough, is that it actually improved quite a lot. So there was a sense of social solidarity in the face of a major catastrophe that was staring us in the face, and so people kind of huddled together. They basically worked well. They tried to provide food, etc. And then that regressed in the course of the last 23-24 surveys. So in a way, people have gone back to that. But what we have found is that the general degree of social capital that exists amongst communities is reasonably high. There are different forms of interpersonal trust. I mean, as far as race is concerned, I mean, there is a concern about that. There's a lot of people don't trust people of other races, and it's high, across the board. Across all racial groups, so that is a big concern for non-racialism and nation building, etc. But at the community, at a localized community level, people are generally, quite cooperative with one another.
Yeah, and I mean, even the despondency levels, for instance, high proportions of residents in Johannesburg responding positively to the statement, nobody cares about people like me. In Region G, most people agree. Almost half of your respondents from there feel like nobody cares about them.
Well, Region G, is actually the southern parts of the city of Joburg, which has large swathes of informal settlements, as I mentioned earlier on. And actually, you can understand that people feel isolated, unemployed, don't have adequate housing, and therefore feel that nobody cares about them. So it's completely understandable from their point of view.
And then finally, the state of participation in. You had, and I'd like just in the next 3 minutes or so, before I go back to Sis Nosipho, just address us about that part about participation in IDP, participation in mayoral imbizos, and participation in community, general community governance structures vis-a-vis the levels of distrust on political leadership.
Okay, so absolutely related to one another. What we found is that there's actually very low levels of participation in these processes. I think that in previous years it was actually relatively high, and because people felt that if they participate in these processes, and generally poorer people were more likely to participate than wealthier people. Because wealthy people say in suburban areas would feel, well, if the state can't do it for us, we'll do it ourselves, whether security or this or that. Whereas poorer people depend on the state for access to good quality services. So I guess that's the main point there. And eventually there's a sense of I'm wasting my time. I also think that the design of public participation processes actually need to change. It's kind of remained unchanged since 1994. There's been Imbizo, everyone comes. They basically tell the mayor or the premier or whoever, or the president for that matter, these are problems, and then once the entourage has disappeared, nothing happens. So there's a sense of despondency in relation to those sorts of processes. It's interesting if you and there's a concomitant increase in public protest. So we just heard in your news item that people in Soweto are basically up in arms because of the electricity outage. So you see, so people are now responding in a different kind of way, and absolutely related to trust in government. We're seeing our survey was very clear. It said that the level of dissatisfaction in the city of Johannesburg is in the order of 61%.
Yes.
So 38% are dissatisfied, 23% are very dissatisfied. So, that's close to not quite 2/3, but 61% is very significant. And then we asked a question about trust in government leaders, and what we found is that 70% distrust or strongly distrust. So only 8% actually say no, they trust them. So so that sense that the trust across the board is actually quite weak. Just to say an interesting point, Mbuyiseni, is that what we found over the course of our 7 surveys is that in the earlier years, the level of satisfaction, which is also related to the levels of trust, for national and provincial government was actually quite high. Local government has historically been low, but now they all look the same. They're all in the order of 25%. So there's a general sense that government is letting us down. Whether the national, provincial, or local.
Yeah. Let me conclude with Sis Nosipho about, as you know, I'll give you a sense of what the report says, and I have in mind here the initiative of the National Dialogue. For instance, the report says attendance at ward meetings has shown a fluctuating yet overall increasing trend, raising from 25% around 2016 to 37% in 2024. Participation in IDP meetings has shown notable growth, increasing from a mere 3% to 11%. But these are not really satisfactory numbers. In contrast, attendance at imbizos of mayors, 12% around 2017, and now stands at as low as 5%. Do you think the national dialogue, Sis Nosipho, would change this picture? Would it galvanize better numbers than what we are seeing in these community consultative meetings by government?
It will depend, because when we say that we want participation in the decision-making processes of a municipality, the province, or national government, the form determines the type of participation. And I've always said, if you call a meeting in Mbuyiseni on a Saturday morning to engage on city matters, and you are a single mother and a whole lot of things that you need to do on a Saturday morning, you're now competing. You are asking me to compete between attending the municipal meeting and doing things that some of them are sustaining my livelihood. So we need to be very creative about how we engage with our citizenry, number one, especially in this age of technology and other ways in which we can engage with people. That's my first point. The second point is that participation should not be an event. It should not be something that happens once a year at IDP time. There are other times where you can still engage with the citizenry. But even more important is, what do you want me to participate on? Because I can be part of the meeting just to make up the numbers. But if at the end of the day, I'm not going to feel like my voice contributed to the decisions that you were making, it obviously is going to lead up to apathy. People are not going to be attending these things. So these are all the considerations that we must think about, because as much as we say we want people to participate in these platforms, when do you want them to participate? Why do you want them to participate? How often do you want them to participate? And importantly so, the feedback loop is critical. So even when you did not incorporate what my input into the process, but understanding the reasoning behind it. So when we fail as a state, and maybe even when you talk about the national dialogue, we will all go and talk, but we're not going to be privy of the reasons behind certain things we're not taking into consideration. And that will lead to people feeling like, we're just numbers. And that's what happens in most instances when it comes to this. And then what it is likely to lead up to, because we've seen people doing on the streets, burning things. In the digital age, we are going to have people do what I call digital doors, where sabotaging the municipal messaging, even on things that the municipality wants to do. And it is very easy for people to do that by creating bots and stuff like that. And those are the things that the municipality must start thinking about.
Okay. Rashid, Seedat, Gauteng City Region Observatory representative, and South African Cities Network representatives Nosipho Hlatswayo. Thanks both for creating time and joining us here on Power Talk.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.